First tip, often when you make a caramel, you bung the sugar in, and then it's all browns from the out, and then forget that, put some water in. Because what you want, what the water will do is will make sure that it'll diffuse the heat properly, and so that then you will have a homogeneous caramelization of the sugar. Here, this is vanilla sugar, so we'll put about this much. So what I'm going to do is first is dissolve the sugar, we'll bring it to a boil, we'll crank it up. So it is, just boil it down. I think I might add a little bit more sugar to that as well. There we go.
Would you use brown sugar?
You can use brown sugar. Do be careful with brown sugar because obviously as it caramelizes it does get very dark very quickly. I wouldn't use too much because it's so strong. You can use different types like unrefined, you can use demerara and all sorts, but just do be careful because otherwise you then again lose the flavour of what we want to have, which is the salt and the vanilla. Note also the double cream, which is what we're using, vanilla pod inside, again to give it that extra boost of flavour. So a couple of terms I'm going to be using as well. I'm going to then deglaze it. So the process is I'll make the caramel which is the caramelization of the sugar when it sort of starts to change its properties. We'll then take it off the heat, add a little bit of butter, and then that's the deglazing process where the fats combine to the sugars, and then we'll then add some cream to then make the proper caramel, and then add a little bit more butter and the salt as well. We don't want to put too much salt at the beginning because I like to have a bit of texture as well. I like to be able to taste the salt crystals. So here we're getting basically another way of being able to look at your caramel as to whether it's coming to the right temperatures. And then you've got thick bubbles. Thick bubbles, no use. What you want is champagne bubbles. And it will also start sort of getting into the lovely sort of light golden colours. When you've got the champagne bubbles, that's when you know that the ratio of water and sugar has come pretty much balanced. Still far too big. Because in the old days, obviously, you didn't have thermometers. So the only way of really being able to understand was the material that you have is by visually looking at it. In the old days, they actually sort of rolled it, which is why you have softball and hardball. You'd actually roll it in your fingers. Dip your fingers in cold water, quickly sort of nab a little bit, and roll it very quickly. Confectioners would always have very, very, very Teflon fingers. Thankfully, I'm of a generation that didn't have to do that. So as you can see right now, the bubble textures are changing a little bit. We've still got some big ones, but we're starting to get a lot more of the minuscule ones, like the Coca-Cola sort of champagne type bubbles. We want to carry on. The colouring is starting to change. It's starting to give a little lightness to it. I think we'll just wait a little bit longer, just again to get rid of all of that water. And then we can start, if you're near it, you'll start smelling the aroma of the caramelisation of the sugar. Okay, I'm going to switch it off now. And then, what I'm going to do is add a bit of butter. Well, a bit. It's a bit more than a bit, but it's about this much. Well, it depends on the packet, really, doesn't it? So. Now leave it. The last thing you want to do is to start stirring it, because what you have here is a cold and a hot temperature, and if you start stirring it, the caramel is just going to... And then trying to get it back into a homogeneous and a smooth state is going to be very difficult. So just leave it. Just leave it until it's all melted. And then where you've got the lumps of butter, just stir it very gently like that. And then you start combining the butter and the sugar slowly but surely. No heat. All the heat is in the sugar. I don't want to do any more than that. So this also, there are different styles of making caramel. This is more of a Breton style because of the more traditional French way of making the caramel. As you can see here, it's starting to sort of incorporate. Then you can start going at it a little bit more and be a little bit more sporty. Right, this is the time to add some heat. 7, that'll do. And we'll bring it back to a boil, and it will carry on incorporating the butter and the sugar together. Yes, that is pretty much what I exactly. Exactly. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take away the pods, which are in here.
Did you split those, or are they whole?
No, I split those. Okay, then we're going to put it in 3 times, not in one go again because of the temperature difference. And leave it. Please do not stir, just let it work by itself. Often people panic going, oh my god, it's gone. No, just leave it. Once it's settled down a bit, then you can stir. That's your cue. Okay, now I can stir a little bit. This is my cue now to put the first chunk of salt. This salt will now dissolve. We'll put about this much-ish, roughly. And I'll add some more cream. That salt's now dissolved, and we'll put a little bit more in. Put about this much. Rough ratio is probably about, normally you should be looking at about 1.5 to 2% of salt for the mass of butter you use. When you do this at home, you really don't want to sort of work out an exact percentage of what 1% of what you just put in there. And then the rest of the cream goes in. Normally, you would cook a caramel like this, what would be seen as about 110, 112 degrees or so. That's when you sort of in the kitchen is very, very precise. Essentially, again, you look at the bubbles. They're still quite big here. You don't want them too big, nor do you want them too small, because when they're too small, they become rock hard. Right, and this is where we add a little bit more butter. And then we switch off. We've got a beautiful colour now. And the butter, what it will do is it'll just glaze, it'll give it this beautiful sheen. This is how you do not burn a caramel without having any scales.